or a Boston Bruins hockey fan. Some days, that's about the only thing that can drag you out of bed. Some shows about the Bruins are done from journalists. Others are done just from fans. Well, we're both. This is UnSupervised. You'll get expert analysis and opinions about Boston Bruins hockey, how they're playing, trade deadline and free agency, major event coverage. If it's Boston Bruins hockey, we're in the know, and we're talking about it. This is UnSupervised. Now your host, Jake Reiser.
I'm back. Well, I guess we're back in a sense. If you don't remember me, my name is Jake Reiser. I'm the host of UnSupervised. It's been a couple of years since I've been on Stanley Cup of Chowder. We last did this back in 2018, 2019. I'd like to thank the former co-hosts along with me, Colin Bestwick and Adam Denhard, who did such a great job helping me build that up from really the ground up. It's been a couple of years since I've been a part of Stanley Cup of Chowder, and with my return, I really wanted to bring this back. But you'll see, we're in a little bit of a new format here. Speaking of the verb see, for those of you watching on YouTube or watching this on Spotify, hello there. It's nice to put a little bit of a face to the name you see on those bylines with all the articles that we push out there. I'm taking over the reins for the podcast, really. I'm going to be the host week to week. I'm going to try and bring you special guests, other writers, other people who are going to be relevant to the hockey world. We're going to be doing some great content. I'm going to try and get this out weekly. And I have a really fantastic guest who you'll see next to me. To start this off, you'll know her as Sweet Annie OD on TikTok and on Instagram. It's Annie O'Donnell. Annie, welcome on.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. So why don't we dive right in? We can talk about what happened this weekend, because this weekend was hopefully important for the NHL in that it was All-Star weekend down in Sunrise, South Florida, FLA Live Arena. And, you know, while it was supposed to be an All-Star game, I think the production just felt really junior B. We can start with the skills competition on Friday night, and I just think that was such a mess.
I mean, the mess is the perfect word to describe it. Everything. I think top to bottom, everything was just so disorganized. The way they made it more complicated than it needed to be, and I understand they kind of wanted to, like, you space it out so people watch, you're waiting for Sidanovi, you're waiting for, the hometown kid, Matthew Tkachuk. Like, why split up the breakaway challenge like that? Why break up the fastest skater? Why, like, just so many, the goal, even the Tendy tandem, like, the rules for that at first, you're like, okay, I got to sit down and, like, figure out what's going on here. It just, I mean, for the purpose of the All-Star game, which I think you and I can both agree is no longer about bringing the league's best talent in one place. It's a fan event. It's a marketing event. It's an event for sponsors and, like I said, a fun fan event. But in that case, make it more appealing to the fan. That's where you're missing me here. And the fact that there were players, and me being a Ducks fan, our representative, Troy Terry, was not in any skills event at all. And at that point, I'm asking, okay, what's the point of having one representative from each team if they're not going to participate in, honestly, the only reason I watch All-Star Weekend is really for the skills competition. I really couldn't care less about the game. But it just, I mean, from the broadcast to the way everything was set up, I C minus D from the weekend. Like, why, what are we doing here?
I think it's funny you call it a bit of a marketing event for the NHL, because I think one of the poorest showouts actually were the fans. You could see so many empty seats during the skills competition. They had to fill seats. It was just, something was really strange overall.
Totally. And it's funny how, the next year it's going to be in Toronto, which will be won't be a concern from the get-go. We already know that. But it's interesting kind of thinking about it, because when was the last time cities like, and I understand wanting to put, the All-Star game in, smaller markets to attract more fans and, kind of get the word out there about the sport and the game itself. But, it's interesting when you think, Boston hasn't hosted one in a long time. Chicago hasn't. Pittsburgh hasn't hosted an All-Star game for the entire time that Sidney Crosby has been a Pittsburgh Penguin, which to me is just mind-boggling. But I don't know. It's interesting. I understand the appeal of putting it in Florida. I understand, obviously with their team on the uprise and finally winning a playoff series this past year and garnering a lot more fan attention. But I wonder. I understand the strategy, like I said, but I think it's time we bring it, bring it back to some of the more established cities too, which is why I like that Toronto's getting it next year.
I think a part of the whole local strategy as well, or some of the events that happened during the skills competition that made it feel local, the pitch and puck going to Plantation Golf Course, it wasn't really successful for me.
No, it was boring. Like I think golf is boring as it is. Like, you think I want to watch hockey players golf? No, I know I'll love the golf in the off season, but it's just like it was snooze fest. And even leading up to like the breakaway challenges, like some of the skits and everything. Like like Pasta. I appreciate the creativity behind his with Happy Gilmore. I thought that was funny, but like some of them were just. I mean, I get it. A lot of these guys aren't actors, but oh my gosh, like the Mitch Marner thing, even Matthew Tkachuk's was a little but I hate to use the word cringe, but it was borderline there. It was close. it was toying with the line of cringe.
Yeah, so Dominic Hasek actually tweeted something interesting about the breakaway challenge today, and it was actually about Sid and Ovi's and letting Sergei come on. He thinks the NHL has sunk to rock bottom and that using Ovi's son, I'm going to read the tweet verbatim. The NHL has sunk to rock bottom. Letting Ovechkin's son perform on the ice at the All-Star game is spitting in the face of approximately 500 killed, thousands injured, and tens of thousands of kidnapped Ukrainian children. The NHL and Gary Bettman must pay for this heinous act. What is the league supposed to do here? Ovi and Crosby and Malkin and Kaprizov and a whole number of other NHL players who are of Russian descent are some of your biggest talents. I know Kaprizov willingly didn't perform in any of the skills competition events, but he's a huge part of the marketing. Ovi, his chase to 800, his chase to Gretzky is going to be a huge part of the NHL for the next couple of seasons. I don't know what you do if you're the NHL. Your hands just feel completely tied.
Dominic Hasek is my favorite goaltender in NHL and all time. I think he's the GOAT. I love him. And I want to give him props. He's really, he's been an advocate. He's been a voice for the Ukrainian people and really stuck by them and really said, and he's stuck, he's very consistent with his viewpoints and he's not letting go. He is holding the gun down to the National Hockey League to really do the right thing here, what he thinks is the right thing here. And my thing with Ovi, and I understand with his his friendship with Putin, his profile picture is still on Instagram, is still him with Vladimir Putin. But I think a lot of people, and maybe a lot of hockey fans kind of don't understand how different it is in Russia. And the fact that, how blessed we are to live, in North America, regardless, I know we got Bruins fans outside of the United States and in Canada and everything, but, we're extremely fortunate to have things like free speech and to live in a world and a country where we don't have to fear for our safety or our family's safety. Ovechkin doesn't have that luxury, and a lot of these Russian players don't, as we've seen. Artemi Panarin having to take a leave to take care of family stuff for speaking out against Putin. It's such a sensitive area here, and you can't fault. Ovi's obviously this one of the greatest goal scorer that we have had the privilege of having, in our generation, and honestly, I think the greatest goal scorer the game has ever seen, and not marketing him would be an absolute crime. And also, you got Ovi Jr. He's 4-5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are we bringing? He doesn't know about this. He doesn't know about what's going on. He's just a kid that wants to hang out with his dad, hang out with his favorite players, and loves the game of hockey. I applaud Hasek for his stance and what he's trying to do. I just think bringing Ovi Jr. into it, it's just, he's a kid. What's the point here?
Right message, wrong target. I think
exactly.
And I don't want to I was talking about this with some of the other SB Nation people. I don't want to get into the whole topic of there's a right way and a wrong way to protest, because obviously Hasek being so impassioned for the right cause for what's going on in the Ukraine, You're right. It's just hard to go after a 4-year-old like that, who just wanted to sit next to his buddies. Kirill Kaprizov incidentally ended up being his babysitter, as we saw during the whole skills competition, that which was cute. But you could have just approached the argument a different way. And I think it continues to detract from an event that is supposed to be fun. I actually want to jump back to one of the other events during the skills competition that on paper might have looked great, might have been really fun, but after an article came out from ESPN, ended up, I guess, being a little bit of a nightmare, and that was the splash competition. I know that the players had really wanted that for a couple of years. It was apparently brought back up in St. Louis. This is according to an article by Greg Wyshynski. They saved it till this year, and they had a couple of the influencers who were there testing the surfboards that they were shooting at, and they were getting knocked down fine. But during the semifinals with Makar, some of the boards weren't going down, and they ended up having to do a reshoot from the opposite side because they failed to account that wind was propping up 4 of the 6 boards on the right side of that thing. Like, cool event, really fun, but you got to test and make sure that's great. They're very lucky that that wasn't a live event, but again, something that a little chintzy, a little fun, but something that they're very lucky wasn't live, that you couldn't see the mistakes for.
Right. And a lot of people were complaining about, the taped segments, and they're like, oh, why isn't this live? And it's like, well, that's pretty much why. You have to, compete with the elements, and things like that happen, which of course, that's showbiz. You're going to have technical difficulties and things like that. I mean, I thought that was pretty entertaining. I thought that was, as far as, the skills competition goes, I like that they incorporate, like last year they did the Bellagio fountain in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I like that they incorporate, the host city and try and create some fun in there. It's fun. I did read that article, and it's funny when you kind of hear like, some things that happen. Oh, they had to, technical difficulties, things like that. But, it is what it is.
I don't need to talk much about the game on Saturday in general. I think all went pretty smooth sailing there for an average day. But we've got about a year until 2024 in Toronto. How do we fix this event?
I would love to see the player draft come back. I thought that was so entertaining, so fun. I forget what year did they first introduce that? 2011, 2012?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say. What was it? Logan? Was that the year? Who was picked last first?
It was Phil Kessel, yeah.
Phil Kessel, okay. But I think that was so fun. Just, gives you want to show these players' personalities a little bit more. I thought that was a great way to do it. And kind of mixing it up a little bit more. You're not seeing the same guys play with each other division-wise, but I think, yeah, bring back the draft. I mean, I loved the jersey concept this year, and fans absolutely, go head over heels over it. So I really think continuing on. I like the reverse retro concept that they stuck with. I think continuing with that in certain ways. And then just simplifying the skills competition too. Like, we didn't need all this jumping back and forth. Let's do one event at a time, get it done. One event at a time, get it done. Like, it's less is more. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. Going back to skills competitions like 2012 when it was in Ottawa, being able to sit and watch all the guys go up against Zdeno Chara in the hardest shot competition, that was something that worked because you could see everybody go all at once. The accuracy shooting, I think it was one of the Sedins who won that year. I could be wrong, but to have it broken up the way it was this year was just so disjointed.
Totally. And I was on the Jeff Merrick show with Matt Marchese, and he brought up the idea to, hey, you have your players voted for the All-Star game, but like bring in specialists. So like guys that normally wouldn't be voted to the All-Star game, but are just very good at certain things, like have a really hard shot, are really accurate. And I brought up a story back in 2011, the Ducks had, how some teams have like their own skills competition?
Mm-hmm.
The Ducks hosted one in 2011, and they had all the, fastest skater, accuracy shooting. But for accuracy shooting, the only player to hit all 4 targets on 4 shots was George Peros.
Oh my God.
A team that had Teemu Selanne, that had Saku Koivu, Corey Perry, Ryan Getzlaff, like Bobby Ryan was on the team, like just big names, great hockey players. But George Peros, the guy that I don't even think maybe has 10 goals to his entire career, but he was the one that is most accurate shooter. And I think that'd be fun. Bring in some of these specialist guys that are really good at certain things.
Maybe we could also do the opposite. Maybe we could see guys who normally don't do any of this stuff do it just for fun. Bring in Linus Ullmark to do the accuracy shooting challenge. Use a goalie stick.
Let the goalies do the fastest skater. That would be funny.
I need to see these guys flying around the rink in pads. One thing I want to see them bring back in 2024, I do love that they make everything so local. Can they bring back the dunk tank and just put some maple syrup in it, please? As someone who used to live in South Florida, it didn't seem like too much of a punishment for some guys to get dunked because it was probably 80, 85 degrees down there. And all of them would come up and whoever was interviewing them would ask, how's it feel? And they all said, refreshing, really nice out here. Make it something a little more of a punishment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's put some slime, like make it like Nickelodeon style, get slimed or something like that.
See, that would be fun for the actual game broadcast. While I appreciate the technology with the jersey tracking and the puck tracking so you could see who was controlling the puck at any given time, we've seen the success of the Nickelodeon broadcast that I believe the NFL certainly done, the NBA's done a couple before. Bring that to the All-Star Game, something fun, because what you're trying to do with this, you said earlier, it's marketing. Bring it to the kids. It's not necessarily our demo, it's the kids' demo. You want these kids to watch this event and be like, wow, I want to watch more of these players. How do I do that? Get them engaged like that.
Totally. I mean, there's a rumor that they might be doing something with Disney Channel. Disney Channel might be broadcasting some NHL games, and I absolutely love that idea. And it makes sense given, the partnership with ESPN and ABC, which is all under the Mickey Mouse umbrella. So I think that would be the most organic partnership there. But I don't know. It's for me, the ESPN broadcast just definitely needs some work too. I think they gotta switch it up with some of the broadcasters and the personalities that they have. It's just very, I don't want to say stale, but like PK Subban, Kevin Weeks, I think those two were probably my favorite. They were just high energy, charisma, but everybody else was just kind of flat for me. And I hate that because I was so excited about ESPN carrying hockey again, but so far they just have not hit the mark for me about a year and a half into this 7-year partnership.
I'm definitely liking TNT over ESPN at this point. As much as I'm not a big fan of Liam McHugh in his current capacity, I think he's a good glue for that entire panel with Biz, with everybody who's on the TNT intermission report. They do such a fun job.
Like Anson Carter, you got Wayne Gretzky's boring as boring can be, but I get why they have him there. Lundqvist too, he's great. No, they did have Rick Tocchet, but of course he's in Vancouver now. But no, it's I would like to see more women on that panel. That's my only critique of them. But other than that, I think they got a solid crew there.
We're about to get to women in just a second, but before we take a quick break, which NHL player do you want to see do the classic Disney Channel intro the most?
Ooh, Trevor Zegras.
Oh, man. I have a soft spot for him. He and I are both BU alumni, so I love the kid. He'd be fun to see.
He's technically not an alum. He was there for only one
That's true. He's a one and done. That's true. He is a one and done.
I was like, I don't think he's got that degree yet, even if he was doing stuff on the side.
All right, we're going to take a quick 30-second break here. When we come back on the other side of it, speaking of women, we're going to talk about you. I want to talk a little bit more about your platform. But we'll be right back in about 30 seconds here on UnSupervised.
Are you looking for a community of Boston Bruins fans to call your own? What about game coverage and articles that bring you the best of the best? That's what Stanley Cup of Chowder is all about. Join us at StanleyCupOfChowder.com for all that and more.
You're listening to UnSupervised. Find us on Twitter at Cup of Chowder and find more at StanleyCupOfChowder.com. Now, back to your host, Jake.
Welcome back here to Unsupervised. After that quick break, I'm Jake Reiser alongside Annie O'Donnell. You know her as Sweet Annie OD on TikTok and on Instagram. And I want to talk a little bit more about you and your platform and what you're bringing to the sports media world. I got a few questions for you to start. Right. What's your favorite sports team or your favorite sports teams in general?
My teams are the Anaheim Ducks for hockey, the Los Angeles Dodgers for baseball, The Lakers, I was saying full team name, so I'll keep going with that. The Los Angeles Lakers for basketball and the Baltimore Ravens for football.
That's quite the
And
outlier.
and Notre Dame for college sports.
What is your favorite personal sports memory?
Ooh. Personal sports memory. Oh, easy. I scalped a ticket when I was living in Chicago in 2017 to see the Dodgers make it to the World Series and win the NL pennant for the first time in my lifetime.
That's incredible.
It was insane. I spent money I did not have on a single ticket to sit behind the Dodgers dugout and be there. Oh, it was Kike You're the Boston loves Boston's favorite Kike Hernandez. Absolutely going yard that entire game. It was unforgettable. The only thing I would change about it was having my dad there with me. But other than that, I loved it.
Speaking of amazing sports moments, what is the best sports moment of all time?
Of all time. Wow. That's a good one. I mean, would I be biased? And it would be not biased, but I feel like would it be too cliche to say the Miracle on Ice?
Not too cliche. That works.
I was gonna say you got a few BU alums in there.
That's true. Seeing Mike Ruzioni around campus a lot.
But no, that's the first one that comes to mind. I mean, I was living in Chicago when the Cubs won the World Series for the first time in 108 years. I would say that's up there. That was absolute insanity. I don't think I'll ever experience anything remote. If I'm in Toronto when the Leafs win the cup, I think that will rival that for sure. Or when the Buffalo Bills win a Super Bowl, if I happen to be there. But I mean, any kind of moment where it's, either the underdog winning or like a drought ending, it's euphoric. It's insane. So I would say anything in that capacity for me would be best sports moment.
If you could be the GM of one of your favorite sports teams, which would it be, and what would your first move be?
Ooh, I got options here. It's funny. I was like, do I dare say the Lakers? Nah, I would not want to be GM for the Lakers. As much as I think Rob Pelinka is absolutely incompetent at his job, having to answer to the fan base that is Laker Nation, no thank you. No thank you. I respect that his job is very difficult, even though I don't think he's very good at it. I don't think I would be better at it. See, with the Dodgers, I mean, I think Andrew Friedman does a really good job, but he does have a lot of money at his disposal too. Oh my God, baseball fans would hate me. I would try and go after every single free agent. Forget the luxury tax. I would just pay it, no problem. I'd be like, here you go. I think I would have more fun being the GM of the Ducks. I think I would have more fun, being in Pat Verbeek's shoes right now as far as, building up this young team, this young core in this rebuild. So I think I would do that.
What profession would you be doing if you weren't a content creator?
I'd be a bartender.
That's
honestly.
fun.
Oh yeah, I would be a bartender easily. If I don't know. I did the 9 to 5 thing after I graduated college, and it was just not for me. And I was going to be, when I started content creation and podcasting, obviously early on, it wasn't bringing in any money for me. So my plan was to be a bartender. And this was beginning of 2020. I moved up to the Upper East Side. I had a connection in. They're like, hey, well, yeah, we'll get you started. I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And then COVID hits. So that killed that pipe dream for a bit, but I would absolutely be a bartender. In a dive sports bar. Oh my gosh, I love just the people you meet. I love just the vibe, the energy in there. I love interacting with people, just talking sports, small talk, you just meet so many different walks of life. In those kind of places. So I think that's what I would be doing.
I feel like that's totally emblematic of your personality and the content that you put out there. You're fun, you're vivacious, you're just totally relevant and on the ball most of the time. Why'd you start posting content?
So it's not a long story, but I was working a job that really was absolutely detrimental to my mental health. I was going to bed kind of wishing I wouldn't wake up in the morning. It was really like, it was a low point in my life. And I ended up getting let go from that job, which was, I knew in that moment it was going to be the beginning of a whole new life for me. But because given in that moment, when you're faced with that kind of adversity, when you're faced with something that, hey, normally people would say, hey, you lose a job, that's a lot. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You're like, no, like this is the beginning. What do I want to do? Like the world is my oyster here. And I knew I wanted to work in sports. I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't want to do, ticket sales. I didn't want to do anything like that. My favorite thing was talking sports. And, I just love, at that time, I was still nervous about putting myself out there at a fear of what people thought of me. And then a couple months go by and, I lost a couple jobs that I, thought I wanted, working for a sports team. But at that moment, I was just like, what do I have to lose here? Like, at this point, the only person in my way is me. And I literally started, I posted like a couple rants on my Instagram. They're still there. I'm keeping them there to like remind myself how I started. But that was originally, it was like, I just posted, turned on my camera and just ranted for a minute. And I just I posted like 5 of those. And I was finally like, you know what? Like, let's see what a podcast can do. And this was in 2019. And I remember my first episode. It was about the possible resurgence of a Mighty Ducks. It was before Mighty Ducks Game Changers came out, but it was like the rumors about it. Don Cherry getting fired. And then, I'm trying to think of that last topic. I can't remember it, but I just put it out there. And I had a cheesy $15 microphone from Amazon. I recorded it in my apartment in New York that I shared with 4 other roommates. And I just took off from there. And then COVID hits. So obviously sports aren't happening, but I was still recording the podcast. And like most people in COVID, I got on TikTok. And I was just kind of goofing around. I said, well, let me record some fun sports stuff and let's just see what happens. And really, it was the summer of 2020 that, a couple of my videos really first started to take off. And during the playoff bubble, and then and then the MLB shortened season is when things really kind of took off from there and just kind of kept building and just kept creating fun content. I love one thing about me is I memorize movie lines and song lyrics very easily. So it's pretty easy for me to take a scenario from sports and create and connect it to either a movie scene or like a TV scene or something like that. It's that's why like some of my videos are just like fun skits like that, along with being some analytical and putting my thoughts out there, because that's really important to me as far as my platform goes. Is I want it to be fun, but I also want to, I know what I'm talking about. I know the sport. I know the team. I know I can bring something to the table with value, but also sports should be fun. So that's kind of how I want to be, as far as my content goes. But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it was like getting over myself and just being fearless and authentically myself on the internet, which is a terrifying thing to do, especially in 2023 when it's so easy for people to hide behind, burner accounts and things like that. And, there's no repercussions for what you say for the most part. But at the end of the day, like if you're secure in yourself and you love what you put out there, like you really don't care what anybody says.
You're right. It is hard to put yourself out there. And there are a lot of people who sit behind anonymous usernames and just sit on their keyboards and put stuff out. The more layers you peel back to reveal yourself, it definitely gets harder to kind of maintain your authenticity, because there's this little doubt in the back of your head of what if people don't like what they're seeing? What if people don't like me for who I am? I do a lot of writing for the website, but people can just see the words I type on a page and I can sit back and edit any pieces of content that I want until I'm happy with them and then put them out into the world. The only face they see is maybe my little photo in the byline right there. Doing a podcast in a format like this is the first time in a long time I've really put my face out there into the world. And so I'm intrigued to see what the response is going to be to this new format. So I completely understand that, it's such a crapshoot when you put yourself out there like that. And to overcome it is a huge obstacle, and it takes so much confidence. And I really commend you for doing that.
Well, thank you. You as well. It's a risk, definitely. And it's one that But like we said, not everybody wants to take that risk, and that's why like there's not as many people doing it. There's not as many people doing face-to-face content and things like that. And yeah, I mean, you gotta, they say, the next, what's the saying? There's one where it's like something is out on the outside of your biggest dreams or like goals are on like the outside of your comfort zone. Like you're not gonna accomplish things by staying safe, and especially in the world of sports creation, content creation in general, whether it's podcasting, writing, social media. If you restrict yourself to just one thing, you're really limiting, especially as, certain platforms are just taking off and growing. Like you have to be willing to expand certain places, which is why I commend a lot of sports creators. I've had people reach out to me about TikTok and say, hey, do you have any tips? Do you have any, things? I'm starting, and I was writing for a long time, but I really want to start putting my stuff in video format, and which is, I think, is amazing. I think more people need to do that. We need more positive sports creators on TikTok. There's no capacity, especially in hockey too. Hockey TikTok it's a smaller group, definitely, and there's a few kind of bigger personalities on there, but we always need more. We need more people on there. So if anyone's interested, or anyone has been toying around with the idea of putting their takes out there on TikTok, absolutely do it.
It was National Women in Sports Day recently, and speaking of kind of amplifying profiles, are there any other people who are currently content creators who people might not be aware of that you think people should be following?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of people. Are we talking specifically hockey, specifically sports?
I would say, we're a hockey podcast, so let's focus in on hockey.
Kylie Saleh, if you are interested at all in any Oilers content, she is absolutely incredible. She works for Oilers Nation and just got hired full time there, but is constantly putting out great content. I gotta go through my phone. Can I pull up my phone? Am I cheating here?
No, you're not cheating. You're good.
There's just, oh my God, there's so many women out there. And that was the one thing I think I will say. And if anyone from, I guess, sports TikTok is going to watch this, it was a little disappointing, I think, and I think part of it was because Tom Brady announcing his retirement kind of clouded over National Women and Girls in Sports Day. But I was a little disappointed to see that a lot of the men creators like really didn't amplify a lot of female voices. On Twitter was totally different. Twitter, guys, the men showed out. On TikTok, not so much, which I thought was disappointing. But hopefully, I try to be understanding of that, saying, okay, there's other headlines happening, but I don't know. I think it's important to uplift those voices like that. Well, Rachel Dory just got on TikTok as well. She's putting out all sorts of really insightful things about the trade deadline, contracts, and things like that. And her credentials speak for itself. She's incredible and smart and accomplished. Let's see. I feel like such a loser. I'm scrolling through. I just want to make sure I don't leave anybody out. Let's see. We're doing hockey stuff, so let's see. Oh, Danny Smith, the Danny Hockey. She does Columbus Blue Jackets content. And I'll be honest, like, not to say I've never really cared about the Columbus Blue Jackets, but being in California, being in the Western Conference, they're just not really a team that I circle on my calendar. Well, maybe I do now, especially after last year's little Nick Foligno and John Gibson incident from last year. But yeah, definitely. It's fun to like follow people that are fans of different teams because you learn, a bit more about, whether the team itself or the fan kind of asset there. But I don't know. It's a lot of great female creators. Let's see. Who else am I missing? Well,
While you happen to be scrolling through TikTok, I've actually got a couple of stats about your own, and I want to see how much you know about your own channel.
Oh boy. Okay.
What do you think your most watched video is?
My most watched video. Okay, I know it's either one of two. It's either this video I did about Eminem at the halftime show, or it's about Marcus Freeman this past year coaching for Notre Dame.
Your first guess of Eminem is right on the money. February 13th, 2022, it has 1.4 million views.
I was like, that one, like, it's always the ones that take the least amount of effort. That's the funniest thing about TikTok is that's why when people are like, oh, I put so much work into my content. I'm doing this, I'm doing all the right things. And you're just like, yo, like, you can't fight it sometimes. Like, it just takes a little bit. Like, consistency is key, but sometimes it's literally the one that takes 10 seconds to film is the one that goes viral. Like, that's why you can't stress too much about the algorithm. You can't stress too much about going viral. And I know you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to say it anyway, is, as far as like advice goes, it's, make content you want to see. Don't worry about numbers, worry about like the quality of content, because you never know who's going to see it. I made a video about this dumb, you being in Boston, you probably saw it, the dumb billboard that Dodgers fan group put from, thanks for Mookie Betts outside of Menlo Lake. It was dumb. And this guy saw the video and shot me a message on Twitter and said, hey, I've got an opening for a co-host on my radio show. Would you be interested? And I said, hell yeah. And I co-hosted that show for a year and a half, and it was absolutely incredible. And that came from a video that only got, I think, 4,000 views. So it didn't go viral by any means, but it just landed on the right person's For You page. So just keep putting your content, keep putting ideas out there, because like I said, you never know. You never know which For You page it's going to come across. I mean, my video about the All-Star game went up on Michael Bublé's For You page not too long ago, just a couple days ago, and that one didn't go, it wasn't viral. I mean, it did pretty good, but it wasn't viral. Sorry to interrupt you and take you.
No, it's all good. It's amazing, insightful information to have. I wonder if you know what your first video was on TikTok in general.
Jeez. I gotta think back to this. Was it a sports one? Ooh, my first. You scrolled all the way down my TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of a couple. It might be, but as far as my first video, I have no idea.
It's amazingly a TikTok dance of you dancing to Shawn Mendes's "If I Can't Have You" on September 12th, 2019. It's got about 1,500 views.
I remember posting that because I thought my abs looked really good.
I will tell you, your first sports-related video was not. You didn't post pretty frequently after that, but your first sports-related video came less than a year after that. It was May 17th, 2020. It was last-place baseball fans chirping the Dodgers about back-to-back World Series losses.
Oh, what was that sound? Oh, I gotta remember. Oh, okay. Oh, that was the Kardashian sound. That's
exactly.
Right. You're so easy to make insecure. Okay. All right. I remember that. Oh, we've come so far.
Yes, we have. So we just talked about making content that, makes you feel good and makes you proud. And I guess kind of Occam's razor a little bit. Sometimes the simplest content is the best content. But what video or what TikTok or what piece of content are you maybe the most proud of? It maybe it hasn't had to have gone viral, but what's something that from ideation to execution you always look back on and go, wow, I feel so proud that I put out a piece of content like this?
I mean, there's a lot of them. I would say from just a creative standpoint, one of my favorite ones that I've ever done, and I'm still to this date so proud of, one of my favorite movies is The Dark Knight. And I don't know if maybe you saw this TikTok on your scroll of my profile, but I had this sound saved of the scene where the Joker is in the pool hall after he kills one of the mob bosses, and he breaks the pool what is they call it, the pool stick?
Yeah, the pool cue.
Pool cue, thank you. And he's like, we're gonna have tryouts. I always wanted to use that sound for something sports related. And I figured it would be for like a team recruiting free agents. But I was ready to use it, and I used it with the Florida Panthers after beating the Washington Capitals in the first round and recruiting new fans to their team. So and coincidentally enough, I had COVID at that time. So I basically call this video my Jordan flu game because I looked sick. I felt sick filming it, but As far as execution goes, as far as, outfit changes, everything, mannerisms, it is by and far one of my favorites. And it hasn't done the best. I mean, I think it went over 100,000, which is still a great number. I'm very happy with it. But it's just one that I look back on and I just smile. I absolutely love it. And then, I would say another one, and it didn't go viral, but any time where I can just like rant about sports. So like I did one where I talked about Chris Osgood not being a Hall of Famer. That's a favorite one for me, just because I believe far and strongly he shouldn't be, and I think it's a very strong case for that. Anytime I can like argue a case of mine like that, and I'm just so confident in it, and I know I'm hitting all cylinders, it's the best feeling. And that's maybe my Achilles heel in a lot of ways is I feel I have to, before I go into something, I got to be 100% ready. I want to have everything, all my ducks in a row. I want to be ready for every kill shot possible, when in reality, sometimes you just need to start. You just need to dive into something, which I had to get over when I started my podcast. But that's definitely a favorite of mine. I would say no, and then series-wise, my judging athletes cameo price is one. I just think, I don't know, I thought that was fun, and I thought of it because I bought a Sean Avery cameo for my brother that was going away to basic training. And from there, I was looking at some of the athletes, what they were charging. I'm like, some of you, I guess, why, Brooks, like, why are you charging $150 for a video from you? Like, you were not that important, even as a hockey player. Like, but then I started scrolling through, and it turned out to be a pretty fun series. So I don't know, there's a lot that I'm proud of. On that page. I would say most things that like and trends are really important on TikTok and like going viral and things like that. But my most proud content are things that aren't trends, or, things that I've thought of, and things that, I was able to connect to creatively. And then also just anytime I'm ranting.
Is that how you continue to evolve your content, as long as you kind of maintain the connection to what you have? Do you have a plan for the future of how to keep innovating on your channel?
Changes. And that's been a fun thing as far as being a content creator, because this space is so new, where there's really no set path and no direct way of how to do things and how to grow. And I've just grown by being myself on my channel. And a lot of, I've been so many people in this community, have been able to get jobs, full-time jobs and things like that. And while that hasn't happened for me yet, I'm taking it as a sign that it's still, I got to stick with this and kind of see where it takes me. I'm a big believer where, hey, if, an opportunity for you doesn't work out now, it means there's something better for you down the line. I have to believe that in a lot of ways, either now's not the right time, or there's something better for you. So as far as, I put a hiatus on my podcast. My brother's currently battling cancer. So I took a hiatus to be here for him. But it's about time for me to come back to it. And I want to incorporate a few more of that, some more podcast content on my channel, and, maybe broadcast a bit more. I think I could do a bit more analysis, a bit more of, my opinions and thoughts on things. Even though I do love the fun videos, and the fun videos do really well, but like I said, I like that balance. So that's my goal for 2023, is just really put more about my ideas out there. Keep being creative, because that's obviously working really well for me. But like I said, find that balance, because there's a happy medium somewhere. I'm just trying to find it.
Well, we hope your brother also certainly beats that fight. It's obviously tough for anybody to go through, but we're glad that even through all of the tough stuff that you go through, that you bring us just such amazing content as much as you do.
Well, thank you. It's a great outlet for me. It's a great escape, in a way. Just really brings a smile on my face and brings me so much joy. Like, I couldn't imagine working a job that I hated during this time. Like, I'm pretty fortunate that I get to dive in creatively into something I love so much, to not necessarily escape. I'll never escape. I can't escape what I'm going through, but it's certainly something that certainly helps, and is a dose of serotonin for me, even on the tough days. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're going to take another quick break. We're going to bring it back to hockey after this little segment. We're going to talk about the upcoming trade deadline. There's a lot of guys who could be moving to a lot of places. We'll be right back in about 30 seconds to talk trade deadline destinations.
Do you want to stay in the know on all things Boston Bruins as soon as they happen? For every goal scored, every trade made, every game won, we're right there. We're Stanley Cup of Chowder. Find us at Cup of Chowder on Twitter.
You're listening to Unsupervised. Back to your host, Jake Reiser.
Welcome back here on Unsupervised. We hope you've enjoyed listening to the podcast so far. Again, you can find us at StanleyCupOfChowder.com and at Cup of Chowder on Twitter. We're here with Annie O'Donnell. You know her, sweet Annie O'D on TikTok and Instagram. And we've got the trade deadline coming up in less than a month. You know, the big name, Bo Horvat, already off the board. We're going to talk about that deal in a little bit. But I want to start this segment testing your knowledge a little bit. I'm going to give you a little bit of a lightning round. I put 60 seconds up on the board here. I've got a list of some of the top trade deadline candidates. I'm going to rattle off as many as I can. I want you to tell me where you think they're going to go. You ready?
All right, let's do it.
Let's go. Timo Meier, forward, Sharks.
New Jersey.
Jacob Chikrin, defenseman, Coyotes.
Ooh. Pittsburgh.
Patrick Kane, forward for the Blackhawks.
I think he stays in Chicago.
Jonathan Toews.
Winnipeg.
John Klingberg of your Ducks.
Boston.
Dmitry Kulikov.
Edmonton.
The Canucks, Luke Shen.
We'll go Carolina.
Vladislav Gavrikov, Blue Jackets.
I think he stays.
Nick Bukestad, Coyotes.
Vegas.
Jesse Puljujarvi, Oilers. That'd be a fun one to see, a guy who needs to get out of that market. Wow, some really interesting destinations. Wouldn't have thought John Klingberg to Boston. I've heard lots of rumors about Luke Shen to Boston, but not John Klingberg.
I mean, for me, there's such a history between Boston and Anaheim at the trade deadline. I'm banking on one of them happening. So I just don't. Boston is obviously not going to want to separate from that first round pick because they desperately need to hang on to it this year.
Mm-hmm.
But between that history there, I mean, we're talking from Bob Murray and even obviously this past deadline with thank you also for taking such good care of sweet Hampus Lindholm. But it just seems like clockwork at this point. That Sweeney pays the call to Orange County and says, "All right, what do you got for me?" So
we are happy to take care of Hampus. He has taken care of our blue line very well, especially at the beginning of the year when Charlie McAvoy was hurt. It definitely sparks a larger conversation about the Bruins. They've got 83 points. They've got a good sizable lead in the points race for the NHL as a whole. You're right talking about that first round draft pick. They need that. They haven't had it the last, oh God, how many number of years. It's really hurt their farm system. But every year we talk about it. Is this the year Patrice Bergeron is done? David Krejci, we thought was done, has come back. Brad Marchand's a little up there. We kind of lost out on another one with Zdeno Chara. We lost out on another one with Tuukka Rask. Do they go all in? Do they just go for depth? What do you think their approach is come deadline time?
Interesting. Obviously you drop through, which not to say that, those dropping those 3 games before, they beat Toronto, I know before the All-Star break, but not to say dropping those 3 games was a concern really. But I think the thing that everybody's saying right now is you have this team that has just been top to bottom, just unbeatable. And it's funny because I remember doing lots of research over the offseason. They're like, oh, how would you rebuild? When is it time to rebuild the Boston Bruins? And that was the conversation. Meanwhile, it's we're night and day from that at this point. It's saying, oh, what needs to happen for the Bruins to make the playoffs? And it's A, B, and C. Well, A, B, and C have all happened where, Ullmark and Swayman are the best tandem in the league. You have David Pastrnak that's on an absolute tear right now and is absolutely making a case to get rightfully paid this offseason. I mean, you have that blue line that is absolutely stood tall. And I just think at this point, if the Bruins were to just go into the trade deadline saying, hey, we're good with what we have, they're probably the only team that has not an excuse, but like a valid reasoning to do that. But I don't think they will. I don't think they will because you know what's at stake here. Patrice Bergeron doesn't have many left. This core doesn't have a lot of cup runs in them left. You got to bolster it up. You have to. You look at all the cup contenders, all the cup champs of past years. All of them have made moves at the deadline. All of them have added something, even if they were completely content with where they were. You gotta come playoff time. You never know, and as Bruins fans know all too well, it's a completely different game, and sometimes the different guys show up, and you need to add those depth guys in there because it's like I said, different game, and that's when things matter the most. But yeah, I do think they make moves up in the deadline.
I completely agree with you. Whether it's just for depth, just to switch up something in the bottom six, whether it's a back-end defenseman, they will end up doing something. And the trade deadline tends to be one of Don Sweeney's better moments to make decisions. Looking at last year with Hampus Lindholm, looking at 2019 when he brought in Charlie Coyle and the rental of Marcus Johansson that got them this close to a Stanley Cup victory. It tends to be one of his strong suits. Though I guess top of my board would be a David Pastrnak extension before then, so you don't screw yourself cap-wise going into the future. The Bruins have such a tight cap situation right now. If you go for a rental, or I guess we can talk about Bo Horvat now, considering he just signed his extension this afternoon. Bo Horvat being traded from the Vancouver Canucks to the New York Islanders, signed an 8-year, $8.5 million AAV extension. That's so rich for the Bruins' blood. I guess I understand why the Islanders did it. It's a little strange. It's a little bit of an overpay considering this has been his best year so far and you don't know what's coming forward. But you need to know your cap situation before you're going to make any big moves.
Absolutely. That's not a Lou Lamoriello type move either. But that trade is still just a big head scratcher for me from both ends, from the Canucks and the Islanders. But I was just replying to a tweet about it not long ago. But to sign an extension with a team where you have yet to play a game for them, you've yet to move there, you've yet to, lay down roots and live there. Like, I don't know. Me as, a regular person, I would want to be like, I think I want to live here for a bit. Like, I'd want to test the waters at free agency too. But, if Bo's bought in, if Bo's, looking at the plan for the Islanders' future, which honestly at this point, before the trade deadline, you're kind of thinking, this team's getting older. This team is not good offensively. Like, Lou's kind of in a tight situation here, like where he's got to either retool or absolutely begin to rebuild up in here. If for someone to sign 8 years and, $8 million, you're just like, what for a team that was near towards rebuilding, like kind of is nearing there. What's the change here? I'm just kind of, I'm still scratching my head. Like, what kind of vision is being sold to Bo Horvat where he's agreeing to sign on there for 8 years?
I don't know whether it's necessarily a vision or whether it's an impending free agent leverage that a guy coming in on a big trade like that can say, hey, you just traded for me. You gave up so many assets. What are you going to do to keep me now? And that you take advantage of that moment to get the money that you're looking for. I know someone tweeted that the original offer was 8x8. So to get 8x8.5, there's clearly a little bit of a strong arm there. Lou Lamoriello was talking at the press conference that announced that extension, and he said verbatim, I don't really want to talk about it. It's too many years and too much money to talk about. So I really think that there's some sort of leverage of being a big impending free agent coming in from a trade.
Oh, definitely, because you want to say, obviously, the big thing, everyone is asking, everyone asks, oh, who won this trade? And, for the most part, you got to wait until, Because if it's just a rental, if you get them and hey, the Islanders don't even make the playoffs, absolutely Vancouver wins the trade and he walks in free agency. But if you lock them down with an extension right away, obviously you're like, okay, you've got this guy for 8 years. He's having a career season. You finally get somebody elite to play alongside Matt Barzal, who you just threw the bank at not long ago. At that point, you're making a stronger case for the Islanders to win the trade. It's just Vancouver-wise, I just felt like they could have gotten more. I really do. No disrespect to Anthony Beauvillier, and you've obviously got that first-round pick that the Islanders needed so desperately too. I don't know why anyone is shipping. If you're not cup or bust, if you're not absolutely balls to the walls, we're going in. You got to hang on to that first round pick. That's why, honestly, I know Ron Hextall of the Pittsburgh Penguins was talking today. That's a team that needs to hang on to that draft pick for dear life because that prospect pool is abysmal. So, especially with a loaded draft like this one coming in 2023. I don't know. It's kind of like that trade-off, especially because the Penguins are in a different situation. You've got, obviously Crosby, Malkin, and Letang that aren't getting any younger, and the Penguins are obviously showing a lot of signs of struggle this year. What do you do at the deadline? What can you afford to give up to make this team a playoff contender again? But it's just why it's my favorite time of year. It's so, as a general manager, you really got to make a lot of calls. You got to, you're basically riding the ship one way or the other.
The Horvat extension approach was actually somewhat similar to the Hampus Lindholm approach Sweeney took last year. I think there's going to be a week in between when the trade happened and when the extension happened, but it was something bang, bang, very, very quick to sign that 8-year extension in Boston. And we're lucky it's paying dividends right now, but we'll never know down the line. And you're right about if you're not all in on the cup, you got to keep those assets as much as you can. You have to learn how to build from within just as much as sign free agents. The free agent pool this year is going to be really interesting, and this trade deadline is obviously going to be interesting. But the Canucks could have waited a little bit longer. I actually have it in my notes right here. I think they could have waited a week longer. My biggest team to look at during the trade deadline is the Carolina Hurricanes. Really unfortunate what happened to Max Pacioretty with his Achilles injury, but they just moved him to LTIR. It gave them $7 million more in cap space. They've now got just over $10 million in usable cap space. You probably could have gotten so much more from Carolina than you could have from the Islanders.
That's huge. Huge space. I don't know. I feel like the worst spot to be in as a general manager is when, you got to make moves, but you got no money to do it. And even Vegas, I mean, Mark Stone just had surgery, so they've opened up a good number of cap space, some dollars there for them too. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do at the deadline. The team I'm watching the most right now is the San Jose Sharks, though. I am very intrigued to see what Mike Grier does and what he's willing to give up for a guy like Timo Meier. Erik Karlsson's not going anywhere. There's no team is going to give up 3 first-round picks for a 19%. If that rumored deal where it was like, 3 first-round picks and they're willing to take on 19% of the cap hit. I was like, if I'm giving up 3 first-round picks, you better be taking on more than 19%. But just money-wise and everything, I just don't think he's not a movable guy. I think he stays put. But Timo Meier, if you're gonna trade him, now's the time to do it.
I keep seeing Timo Meier to New Jersey.
I love that. I like Timo Meier in New Jersey, and there's a lot of obviously appeal there with him being a restricted free agent, so that's leverage that San Jose can use. Obviously, that qualifying offer of $10 million is a thorn in the side, but New Jersey can take that on. They've got the cap space to do it. And that's a big, it's always, you can rumor, you can talk about teams that, players would be great on, it would be great, but obviously the cap and the hard cap is obviously a buzzkill for a lot of teams there.
Boston University West. I'm sorry, I mean San Jose. I love Mike Grier and I love David Quinn as BU guys, but they've certainly got an interesting rebuild coming up, and so do your Ducks in the midst of one. You have some core players in Troy Terry, Trevor Zegras, Jamie Drysdale. What's their approach at this deadline?
Oh, it's sell. I mean, you gotta, we're still in rebuild mode. We gotta clear some space here and get, a guy like Kevin Shattenkirk for a playoff team that needs a solid second, third pairing defenseman going into the playoffs, a guy that knows how to win a cup, that knows how to play in the playoffs, I think could get, if not a solid player, maybe a draft pick out of him. Adam Henrique having a solid year too. I mean, scoring goals, living up to his most of his contract, I would say. If they decide to move him and take on a little bit of that money, I think that would be an interesting move as well. And I think Klingberg is a for sure goner. I'm sure there's lots of calls asking about a rental player and a guy like Jonathan Klingberg, which that honestly I think was a big benefit to that 1 year $7 million deal he handed out over the summer. Obviously Klingberg wanted that longer term, but given that that wasn't the case, changing representation and the Ducks saying, hey, come play with us. We had a solid first half last year, a lot of young talent here. You don't like it, we're in the bottom of the standings, which of course now they are. We'll ship you out to a contender. We'll ship you out somewhere where you can go chase a cup. So there's a lot of options. It'll be interesting to see what Pat Verbeek does and how locked he was busy, at the deadline. Literally, obviously the Raquel trade. Well, the Hampus Lindholm trade happened a week. No, not a week, maybe a couple days before the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
But that Rickard Raquel trade came in and obviously the the rejected Evgeny Dadonov trade with Vegas, of course. So lots of creative ways. I'm sure, given how loaded this draft is, he's gonna keep hoping I want to say they have multiple second round picks this year, so maybe ship one of those out too. We'll see. Lots of options here for the Ducks, but it should be. I'm hoping Gibby stays a Duck. I think he's always thrown around at the trade deadline, especially given there's teams that need a goaltender going into the playoffs here. So we'll see though. I'll see what Pat Verbeek does.
Klingberg taking a little bit of a page out of Taylor Hall's playbook, taking that 1 year prove-it deal that Hall did in Buffalo, which everybody thought that was a head-scratcher, turned it into a trade to Boston and an extension there. We'll see if it works out just as well for Klingberg.
I don't know if Klingberg will get a Taylor Hall or a Hampus Lindholm type extension. If my prediction is right that he goes to Boston, and maybe and listen, I was like it was wrapping around, but I like that fit there, and I think a Ducks Bruins trade is bound to happen. But yeah, I mean it's that show me deal. It's that, hey, let's see if this works, and if not, we'll send you on your way. But I think it'll also be interesting given the fact that Pat Verbeek really hasn't done a lot this year, with the exception of picking up Jason Megna off waivers. So not to say he's tanking, because Gary Bettman says that NHL teams don't tank. But it's he's definitely in that rebuild set mind, which is honestly a relief to see, especially after Bob Murray was just delaying the inevitable and pushing against the car, eventually going off the cliff trying to stop it. But that's what needs to happen. Not every team is as fortunate as the Boston Bruins and avoids a complete and total overhaul. But yeah, it's nice to see that we're finally bought into a direction, and that the young talent up and coming is the future is bright. So yeah, it's time to get busy if you're Pat Verbeek.
Bruins fans, imagine a right side defense of Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo, John Klingberg, Connor Clifton. That's pretty intimidating, isn't it?
I'm just saying.
I think we're going to wrap it up here. Annie, we so appreciate you having you on the inaugural, revival show of Unsupervised.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been quite the honor and such a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely. And for all you Bruins fans here on Stanley Cup of Chatter, we're going to be coming at you weekly with podcasts, new guests, talking about everything going on Boston Bruins. Just remember, there's always something brewing every single day. I'm Jake Reiser. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Unsupervised. If it's happening with the Boston Bruins, we're in the know, and we're talking about it. Giving you the inside scoop. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and hey, share it with some friends. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Jake on Twitter at Jake Reiser and find Stanley Cup of Chowder at Cup of Chowder. And of course, engage with us and find out more at StanleyCupOfChowder.com. See you next time on UnSupervised.